start us off, let me ask you a question. What do these three things have in common? The most expensive chocolate bar in the world was called Wispa Gold. This impressive piece of architecture called the Sagrada Familia. Lastly, the most recognized piece, technology in the world, an iPhone and its packaging. What do all three of these things have in common? Well, to start, they all sound kind of ridiculous. But then I hear those stories and also think, wow, that takes guts, it takes creativity, that's bold. When they were imagining wrapping chocolate in gold or building a building that went beyond the lifetime of the architect or the sleek packaging of a phone, they were probably thinking, what if this is ridiculous? The point is, being creative can be scary. There's this fear that being creative in how we dress and what we create and how we express ourselves will lead to isolation, misunderstanding, or judgment. Oftentimes we just shut ourselves down. But here's the bigger problem. If everyone is concerned about being judged for being expressive, even when something is worth it, do we just stop celebrating the things that matter most? Wouldn't living by those rules create an entire society of insecure social norm followers? Walking on eggshells where everyone criticizes everyone or lives in fear of being criticized themselves. There's actually something that happened in Jesus' life that helps us make sense of all of this. There's an event a guy named Luke wrote that has to do with what we're talking about today. He writes about something that happened to Jesus, and as you listen, you see where the idea of worth or value shows up. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from the city heard he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them with her hair. She kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner." Listen to how Jesus responded. "I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven, so she has shown me so much love." The story has so much to teach about what we do when something is worth it. Luke tells us this woman pours perfume on Jesus' feet and then uses her hair to wipe them. That may sound strange to us, but in those times, ointments and perfumes were expensive. You saved them for special occasions. That's why when Judas saw her pour it out and use it on Jesus' feet, he complained about how wasteful it was, arguing that at the very least it could have been used and sold and the money given to the poor. No doubt she was used to being judged, outcast, and labeled for her negative reputation. You can practically hear the disgust from the religious leaders when Luke writes that they were thinking if Jesus knew what kind of woman she was, he wouldn't have let her touch him. But Jesus didn't see it that way. Where they had discounted her, judged her, and were disgusted by her, she was willing to bet Jesus might be different. And while the Pharisees may have felt uncomfortable, Jesus felt grateful. He received it. He watched in awe. How could one act by one woman be seen in two totally different perspectives? It had everything to do with the perspective of the ones that were watching. The religious leaders didn't see her as someone made in God's image. Jesus saw this woman as loved, as valued, and as so much more than what people said about her and what she had or hadn't done. The men saw her as worthless, so they saw her act as wasteful. But Jesus saw her as worthy, so he saw her act as worship. A party starter knows, because of everyone's worth, creativity can be an act of worship. He saw her act differently because he saw her differently. This means because you are made in the image of God, what you do creatively has value, because you have value. A party starter lives knowing it's the image of God in us that makes our creative expressions have value. Well, let's think about it in a kind of funny way. Have you noticed how popular these things are again? Disco balls? They got back into the teen rooms of today. They were actually something our grandparents used to get the party started. They're expressive, meaning they are really hard to miss. They light a room and fill it pretty boldly. They're also very extra. Let's just be honest. As trendy as they are, disco balls are extra. Last thing, they're experimental. The first disco ball had to be an experiment. Maybe it was like, hey, let's make a tiny piece of mirror and glue it to the back of a basketball, shine light on it, and spin it in the middle of the dance floor. Weird idea, yeah. Did it work? Here we are today, still buying and talking about them. Here's what I'm saying. What if when it came to how we celebrate others, we were more like this? Here's a few ways how. Be expressive. Tap into the bravery and celebrate others, verbally, openly, despite who might be looking and criticizing. Don't be too insecure to celebrate others. Onlookers may be judgmental, but when you see value and worth of others, celebrate them. Express when you see something winning. When you see a person winning, express when something is worth complimenting. Express your views and your values whenever it can create a better experience for someone else. And be extra. Splurge on celebrating others. Go all out. Break out expensive perfume. Add extra decorations, finishing touches, handwritten letter. Use people's names and make eye contact when you talk to them. Create moments and vibes and works of art that make people stop to feel seen and welcomed. And last but not least, be experimental. As you start the party for others, use whatever you have to celebrate their worth. It was hair, tears, and perfume from the woman in the story. Listen, when you hear the word creative, you think crayons and markers and artwork. You're gonna have to expand on your definition of creative. Creative means putting unexpected things together to make or create something new. That TikTok that lives in your head rent-free is because someone took the extra step to get creative and intentional and fun, humor, and the unexpected. Being a party starter is about reflecting who God is back to the world. Look around. From people to nature to science to art, there is an ongoing party celebrating the dignity of all humans. When we change our perspective of others from not worth it to worth it, our response towards them goes from feeling wasteful to being an act of worship towards God.